Okay, we're going to do two things in this session. We've got about an hour left, and that's about it. I want to briefly describe what these other sections of the chart are, and then I'm going to address Psalm 119. We talked about this upper section. There's a concept of the model, a geometrical model of what's called the horsetail plant. It's a plant here in Oregon, and down here at the bottom is a little drawing of it, and it says model equisetum, which is the horsetail plant. It's the Latin name for what that plant is. There's a concept in that plant. The way the plant grows is that there's sections, and these are segmented stalk. A segmented stalk. It grows up like a shoot, and out from each section of the stalk, there's an array of leaves, which are actually like pine needles almost. They're lines, and they come out in an array all around that joint. And so this joint and this joint, every joint has an array of these pine needle-shaped leaves. Well, I was looking at it one day, and what I saw was that there's an approximately, somewhere between 17 and 25, 28, call it an average of 22 vertical sections. Approximately an average. So figure this represents the relationship of the letters of the alphabet to each other. This is the model of the horsetail plant, which is what this whole top section is. It's the horsetail plant model, meaning here's a sequence of 22 letters in a sequence. 22 letters in a sequence is like these sections. 22 sections hooked together in a chronological sequence. At each juncture, as it were, you can see an array all the way around it of 22 other letters, which each one looks at that letter. So it works both ways. From each letter's perspective, which is what this is here, which is the same as that. It's just written both sides so that you can easier negotiate it, navigate it. From each letter's perspective, you can define Aleph. If this is a letter Zion, like we discussed before, if I'm standing at Zion, say this here represents the letter Zion, right? This letter would represent the Vav, this joint represent the Het, but say we're at Zion. Now, the pine needle-shaped leaves that are coming out in an array all around it is like this. I'm going to put on the Zion point of view, a weapon, something that cuts. What is an Aleph from a Zion point of view? There's a Zion. It's a regulation of how something's done. It's this strategy or this concept that regulates. A regulation is to say, this far, no further. It's the strategy behind, it's the Aleph of a Zion. So what is the Aleph from a Zion point of view? What is a bet? And you say, well, what is a bet from a Zion perspective? It's to be pregnant or an other, which is to say, if Aleph is 1, bet is an extension of the Aleph being not Aleph, but if you're 1 and you're complete, if you're Echad, if the Ein Sof, the unlimited one, was complete in and of himself, he somehow had to disengage a part of himself to make an other that was not himself. It's a picture of being pregnant. The letter bet means in. To be pregnant, you have an other in. So each square, you have to sit there and kind of think about how one letter is relating to the other from what kind of point of view. That top section takes a lot of cerebral cognitive activity. There's no quick, easy way to explain it all here. That could be another thing. I was talking to a friend who was talking about perhaps making a computer program excuse me, where each square could be highlighted and then a 5-minute explanation. But there's like 400 squares there, and that would take quite a while. I'm just explaining how the format of this is to say, from this perspective, what is an Aleph, what is a Bet, what is a Gimel, what is a Dalet, what is a Hey, what is a Vav, what is a Zion, so forth and so on. But also, from each one of those other letters, you can say, okay, I'm over here in the Aleph position. What is a Zion? I'm over here in the Bet position. What is a Zion from a Bet perspective? From a Gimel perspective, what does that same Zion look like? So the way this top chart works is, the way my wife uses this is that she will find a word that's spelled, for example, kuf zadi. So she'll look at kuf zadi and say, well, that's a picture of a thorn or a crown of thorns. But it's not the word that's spelled kuf zadi. That's the thing. This isn't a chart of the spelling of words with these two letters, though if you tried to look at something like that, it's not that far off, because it's a kuf concept and a zadi concept blended together. When you spell words, you've got these two concepts blending together. But what this really is, a crown of thorns is a kuf with a zadi perspective. Why? Well, a zadi can be something like a thorn. So can a samik, so can a kuf actually. But if you have a kuf, which is like, here's something like this and something like that, well, this is almost like a person with a crown. The letter kuf literally can mean back of the head. Well, if you have a zadi, which is a thorn, stuck on the back of your head, it's kind of a picture of a crown of thorns. But that's a kuf with a zadi aspect plugged into it. What did the crown of thorns represent? Well, then you have to go back to all those pictures in the scriptures of like the ram that was caught in the thicket, Yeshua with the crown of thorns beaten down on him, and then you could pull in all these other things as thematic parallels. Tony Robinson talked about thematic themes that overlap, and that's where you lay those on there. Anyway, that's how that works. We'll get to that in a minute. So we talked about Daniel perhaps being instructed by the angel, the Malach, to come up with the Chaldean flame letters. The Chaldeans were the sorcerers of the arch enemy, the Assyrians. Why should the Kadosh script, if the modern Hebrew truly is, as some think, holy writ, Kadosh, sacred, sanctified, but it's the sorcerers of the arch enemy Assyrians? It's named for them? How did that happen? Daniel was known as the chief Chaldean, the chief magi, the magician. It's all the same word. I think it was him that came up with it because the angel told him to, and he said, hide the word into the book until the time. A little distraction here, but this little bumper sticker thing, this is the Hebrew words ayin dalet, ayin tav. Ayin dalet means until. The word ayin dalet is also a witness and a testifier, like in a court of law, a testimony of one who bears witness. Ayin dalet, ayin tav means time, until time. Hide the words and seal the book until time of what? The end of the curse? This says in paleo, B'nai Israel, ayin dalet, ayin tav, edit. It's kind of the way you'd pronounce that. What does edit mean? Well, when you edit something, you correct the text. Bin dar dun da'at. It's Heblish again, it's playing. Been there, done that. We should have been there and done that, but we haven't. So let's edit the text so we can bin dar done that. The word bin, as we said before, means to think, ponder, evaluate, compare. Dar, dalet resh, is the word for generation. So if you compare generation, compare what generations? Here, how about we compare the generation where the instructions of the covenant were first given to our forefathers and compare them to us today. These are the two generations we should compare. What did he say according to the covenant to our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, David, and the prophets that he sent, Yeshayahu, Yeremiyahu, Yezekiel? And what is he saying to us? If we're at the end of the curse, then we should look back and say, the end of what? What do we do? What did he say to them? You have the blessing of the curse. We got the curse. How do we now get the blessing? Bin dar, compare the generations. Dalet nun, Dan, judge. But dalet is like this choice, the decision, a fork in the road, a door. Nun is to engage in the activity. If you see the door and you're supposed to leap, like nun is a fish jumping out of water, jump through the door. Choose the blessing. Our forefathers chose the curse. We are presented with the occasion to choose the blessing. If we choose the blessing and jump through that door to da'at, dalet ayin tav, the door is open to understanding the covenant. How is the door open to understanding the covenant? We've been scrambled for 2,730 years through the Paleo Hebrew until the time. It was sealed and hidden until the time. How did he seal it? Well, the word chet tav mem and samek tav mem are the words for hide and seal. A chet is a fence, and it means to neutralize, to make non-specific, to generalize so that you look at it and you go, I don't know what it means. English letters, Greek letters, and modern Hebrew kind of does that. You look at the word, you translate it, and you don't know the details. It's in the details. Samik and Tav basically means like to put a cork on something so it can't open up, and the samik is the picture of the trellis or the engineered lattice work for a structure. So Daniel, by hiding and sealing, if you look at Hebrew words, he put it into an enclosure, a het tav mem, and samik tav mem, and the word tav mem is the word for perfect. Be thou perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. It was tav mem. It's where we get the word tom or tomim, like Urim and the Tumim is the perfect specimens. So he took the perfect and he put it into a het, an enclosure like a prison, so it can't be made sense of. And then samik, the engineered structure, was sealed. But in the paleo, it opens it up. So I think ayin dal, ayin tav is now. Now, what, just for what it's worth, on the bottom line, the bottom line of the whole matter, this is Daniel 12. Quite a lot of it's written in paleo, because once you get a handle on the paleo, the English words won't do. But if we come through here, I'm going to get to Psalm 119 in a second. This here is Exodus 20, which is the Ten Commandments. This here is Jeremiah 31, which is where in the Old Testament it talks about the Brit Chadashah, or the New Testament, the New Covenant. And this is Daniel 12, verses 4 to the end of the chapter. The reason these are down here is because there's a way of sequencing the matters in those three verses according to the pattern of the alphabet. That's a whole other explanation, which there just isn't going to be time for, but they're broken up into pieces. The Aleph, for example, I am Yahweh. That's the first words of the Ten Commandments, Ani Yahweh, or Anoki Yahweh. I'm Yahweh. That's the Aleph concept. The Bet is the other that the Aleph impregnated, you might say, or opened or caused to exist as an extension of himself that's other than himself. So what is the Bet? The Bet is like the wife compared to the husband, or the son compared to the parents, or Israel compared to Yahweh. And Yahweh says, I'm Yahweh, your Elohim. Who's you? Who's Israel? Israel is anybody who wants Yahweh to be its Elohim. It's not just the people born or the people that happen to learn because their parents learned, but those by choice learn the ways of Yahweh. So the position of the Aleph is I am Yahweh, the position of the Bet is your Elohim, and the position of the Gimel then is the connection between the two, who took you out of miseries. Well, that's a play on words, because the word in Hebrew for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which is similar to where we get the word miseries. I took you out of the land of your misery, and then the Dalet position, which is the door, from the house of slavery. How do you come out of the house? Through the door. I took you from the house of slavery. So this is how he Gimel Daleted. But the word Gimel Dalet as a word is fortune or luck. Fortunately for you, I took you, Israel, out of your miseries and your slavery into his dominion, where he then says, because now I'm your boss, instead of the people that you were slave to that were making you miserable, do not have any Elohim. So then he goes on and he gets into the Ten Commandments. The point is, when you break up these three places in the rendering according to the letters, everything fits. That's another explanation, but that's why it's here. This center section in these pastel colors are different than this top section, which is the horsetail plant model. What this is taking each letter as a concept. So this top row here says Aleph is a concept. That's the same as this row here, which is to say Aleph is a strategy, which is the same as this row here, which is basically Aleph is the concept of the omnipotent, eternal, other side of the creation event, the architect, the author, the thing that we can't really define because all we were given is Bet, which is why the word Bereshit or Genesis starts with the letter Bet. It's like this is what we start with, the other is inferred. The architect is inferred because of what we see, hence Aleph Hey Yod Hey, I will be what I will be. The omnipotent one is revealed himself as the creator, the Yod who has revealed everything about himself is the Hey. Anyway, this then is another way to read the letters, not keyed to each other, but just as their own identity. Aleph is master, Bet is a beneficiary. Gimel means had or lifted up, like the head of the camel lifted up. So these are just the meanings of the letters, very similar to the things on this other chart. For the sake of reference, these letters are not specifically keyed to each other, they're independent. But what you'll find, and the reason for this chart and that chart, and the reason for this other chart that I had made mention about the natural chronological sequence, is that the letters being next to the other letters where they're at really does make a difference. Once you know what the letters mean, you realize the dalet had to be between the hay and the gimel, because the sent one came to the earth, revealed as the door. Hay is revealed. He was sent for what reason? To reveal the door. So why did the gimel come to the dalet? Because of the dalet. We needed to see the door. So once you realize all these letters, you realize, gosh, they have to fit this sequence. There's no other way around it. You could take all the letters of the alphabet and throw them in a big pile, and then when you know what the letters mean, you'll place them right where they belong, if you can see the pattern, if you can see the message embedded. So these are all the letters as just what they mean. This section in here, meta, means change in place. When you know what the letter means, and what's the difference between this letter changing into the next letter? Why is it in this chronological sequence? The word meta is a Greek word which means to change. And what I found, according to the dictionary definitions in English, meta-element, meta-mere, meta-nucleus, meta-basis, and then what those words mean are written right underneath. It tells you the aspect or the nature of the change when you're changing from this letter to that letter. And it happens to fit really well. That's a bit subjective. I was going through the dictionary and saw that it was a perfect fit, so I included it on the chart because it tells you not just the meaning of the letter, but the nature of the change, the dynamic of the alteration between this letter and that letter. So now you're reading the space between the letters, not just looking at the letters themselves. You understand? You're looking at the change, not just the object. Okay, anyway, the next one then, it says who, there's a question mark, an exclamation point, and another question mark, and then there's the letters yod mem if you read it from left to right, but that's not the way you read Hebrew. You read Hebrew right to left, so the word is mem yod, which is the word me. So it says who, me. It's a play on Hebrew and English again. If you read it as English, it would be me, 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 who, me. But the word me in Hebrew literally means who. Who is this? Who do you think is described by these letters? I said earlier, this is not Christian. This is not Jewish. This is Kadosh. This is keyed to the Mishkan pattern, which is the pattern of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, which is keyed to the 7 days of creation, which is keyed to the 7 festivals, which is Yahweh's personal Kadosh revelation of himself poured out. So, Aleph basically means, this is me, being before time and space. Bet is to be clothed in dust, dust materialization. This is to whom it concerns. Gimel is the voyager, me in relationship to you, the link in between. Dalet means to be made vulnerable, and it has to do with this tearing apart, like a door is the separator. It's not just the thing you go through, it's the same what keeps you out, which is the schism between me and you, a disparity. Hey is like, here you go, this is my overture to you. Vav, our common link, humanity, the commonality between us. And then there's an exclusion, there's a filter, there's design, there's a cutting off. And you could say, who's this describing? Well, if you read both these things all the way across, you'll see that it sure looks like Yeshua, Yahusha, Yod-Heh-Vav Shinayin. It looks just like him. But if this was from before the creation event, keyed to Yahweh's own stuff, this isn't Christian, nor is it Jewish. It's Yahweh's revelation of his plan when he says, I'm going to do this. That's what I'm doing. And the kaf, which means you, I'm doing this for you. But here also now, your regard is to, the kaf is a prefix meaning like or as. The kaf is a suffix meaning at the end of this section, this is for you. But as a prefix now, it's like Yahweh says, this is what I'm doing, Aleph through Yod. Now this is what you're supposed to do. All of this, kaf lamed means all. Kaf lamed mem is where we get the word calamity, but it's also has to do with Yod kaf lamed mem, ichalam, it has to do with to have power, to prevail, and to have capacity, to have capability. And yet, when you break this down according to the menorah pattern, the menorah, if you read close, each of the 6 branches had 3 cups or bowls, which I would think would be like lights, and there's 4 in the center. Well, 3 times 6 is 18, plus 4 is 22. There was 22 lights or bowls in the menorah. There's 22 letters. If you break it up according to the menorah, these 4 letters here are in the center one, which basically means to have power, capacity to prevail. And it's like, gosh, if we regard these words by I will, basically, or to say he will, all of them, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, literally, Yod as a prefix means he will, Kaf, Lamed, all, Lamed, Mem, to them. He will regard all of them. The man who would be having the power to prevail with full capacity of his humanity as designed from the Creator will regard all of them. The letters of the alphabet, the 22, like the menorah, and he will be the menorah. He will let his light shine and bear good fruit, that all men may see your good works and glorify your Abba in Hashemayim, your Father in the heavens. You see that you could just lay these things after one after the next, and they all fit in such a wonderful way. So these 2 lines right through here, it's not Christian, but you look at it and it sure looks like Yeshua to me. This is the Mishkan pattern, and this is 7 different places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 11 there, but there's it essentially tells you different places that the Mishkan pattern fits. There's one not on here. I'm just going to show you how it works. Devarim, Deuteronomy 30, verses 15 through 16. I'm going to show you according to this. And here's a random place that I was reading, and as I've said before, I found about 500 different places where the Mishkan pattern fits. I've only got 11 of them here, but I'll show you another random one. This is in Deuteronomy 30, 15 to 16. See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. You could say, okay, that's a status quo. That's out here. I put before you life and death, good and evil. Here's the Mishkan pattern. We're just going to start here. This is the Mishkan pattern right here. I command you today to love Yahweh your Elohim. Well, see, this represents the kingdom of Yahweh. Here's his name in color, blue, purple, red, and white, on his kingdom. And in the sequence of just reading the narrative, he says, here's where you're at. I'm placing this before you today, and I'm telling you, you should love Yahweh your Elohim. Yahweh your Elohim is typified by the big white fence. Where you're at today is like in the darkness, and yet there's this message of hope. It's kind of like Genesis chapter 1, darkness is on the face of the earth, everything was tohu vebohu, but yet the Ruach Elohim merhefet al pnei hamayim, the spirit of Elohim hovered, fluttered, quivered, vibrated over the surface of the waters. So here there's a message of hope within the darkness. There's this glimmer, there's this glint, there's something, there's a bit of light even in the darkness. And he's saying, regard that and then look to Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways. What is it to walk in his ways? Regard the Torah instructions. Filter out what he said. Kaf is like the kidney, Lamed is the heart. Basically, the pump and this filter is the mechanism of learning his ways. And to keep his commandments. What does it have to do with the laver or the mem and the noon to keep his commandments? The way you keep his commandments is not only to harbor them and to nurture them like a womb, like a woman caring for her child, but it's also as a good steward doing what he said, and a good one who is learning to keep his Kaf and Lamed. It's like keeping them is not just nurturing and tending, but it's also the learning and the application. So the learning is the Kaf and Lamed, the nurturing is the Mem Nun, and then it's keep his statutes, like the menorah. What are his statutes? What did he say? Be the menorah, be the good steward, be like the guy on the watchtower. Going back to the Psalmic concept, which is like the menorah concept. And his judgments. What are his judgments? Mishpat, which has to do with, this is the way his judgment's going to go. What you do to these guys is what's coming back on you multiplied. Be careful how you judge. Whatever you do is going to come back. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. If you give grace, you'll get grace. If you just come, that's what's coming back on you. You set your own life up, not only in this life, but in the world to come. Bear that in mind. That's the way it works. That you may live and multiply. Well, the thing is, what I found in this pattern, every time it's in the position of the pei, the mouth, which is the altar of incense, it's an explanation, a reasoning. This is why you should love Yahweh your Elohim, walk in his ways, keep his commandments and his judgments, his statutes and his judgments, so that you may live and multiply. The purpose of this is to live and multiply. The purpose of this is not necessarily just to get a lot of money, or the purpose of this is not just to go to heaven. The purpose of this is because Yahweh made the face of the earth for us to live and multiply. He didn't just make this place to wipe it all out. He made this place for us to live and multiply. If you look at every blessing he told his people, it all has to do with life. He'll send rain, your crops will grow, he'll keep the wild animals away, he'll keep the enemies away, and the blessing of going back to the land all has to do with life. So the people that say the tribulation's upon us, it's the end of the world, I disagree, that's another matter. It's so that we can live and multiply. And that, now here's the hope set before us, that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in the land where you are entering to possess it. There's a simple rendering of the Mishkan pattern, Deuteronomy 30, played out according to this, though it's not on the chart. It's just a matter of saying, this is the format in which he thinks. He calls us from where we're at to regard him and his kingdom, his name. This is the aspects of his kingdom. Learn his instructions, nurture them, believe what it'll bring forth as we do what he said, be mindful of how we regard others because it's coming back on us. He'll explain it, the whole thing to us, listen to his words and regard them as we process our being. And the hope set before us is to say, hey, we get the blessing. There's always the reward right there. The pictures here are little glyphic examples to make it easy. And I already explained this is how it lays out. Ultimately, the Shema Israel, this is about what are we supposed to hear? What are we supposed to believe? What are we supposed to do? If we think he's done away with it, there's nothing to believe. There's nothing to do. It's like there's something about something going on these days is soaking in prayer rooms. Now, I'm not putting that down, but just think about it. We're just going to go there and soak. Okay. What are you going to do? We're just going to soak. It's like, but what are you going to do? We're just going to soak. But what are you going to do? Are you going to listen? Are you going to believe? Are you going to do? Are you going to shema? Are you going to shemer, watch, keep, and guard? Are you going to get up and engage what it was you soaked up, or are you just going to soak? Do you think it's all been done for you, or did he say, I've imparted something to you, now get up and do something with what I gave to you? If you're going to soak, that's one thing, but what are you going to do with what you soaked? It's not the end of the matter. It's what we are supposed to be doing as good stewards. I'm going to jump into Psalm 119. In verse 18, now for those of you who are not familiar with Psalm 119, it's one of the unique chapters out of the entire scriptures. The author is supposed to be David, and apparently what he did is he took Psalm 119, which is like the longest chapter in the whole scriptures, and he broke it down into 22 sections, each section named for one of the letters of the alphabet. So hey, we're talking about the letters of the alphabet, so this is a very pertinent chapter to discuss. However, in each of the 22 sections, he has broken them down into 8 sections. And you'll never see it in English, but in Hebrew, the first word of each of the 8 verses starts with that letter of the alphabet. So, for example, Psalm 119, verse 1, praiseworthy are those whose way is perfect, who walk in the Torah of Yahweh. Well, the word praiseworthy is ashri. It starts with the letter aleph. The next verse, praiseworthy, that starts with the letter aleph. Every one of the first words of all 8 verses begins with an aleph. The next 8 verses all start with the letter bet. The next 8 verses all start with the letter gimel. The next 8 with dalet, so forth. But you'll never see it in English. It's a poetic. It's like, okay, what was David doing? Was he just messing around? He's like, well, I think I'm going to write a poem. I'll just write 8 verses, 22, and I'll start them all with the same letter. Hey, that's just a piece of art. It's literary art, but that's all it is. I'm singing a song, I'm going to play it to my harp, and there's nothing more to it than that. Is there nothing more to it than that? How do we know? Let's look at verse 18. Unveil my eyes that I may perceive wonders from your Torah. That's the way it is rendered here in the Stone Tanakh edition. Now, If David already knew the alphabet, after all, he is writing this psalm structured to the alphabet. If he's already writing the alphabet, then he already knows the language, and he already knows the narrative. The king's first job, according to the Torah, was to write 2 copies of the Torah in his own hand, write them out. He already knows the narrative. What is he asking for? Unveil my eyes that I may perceive wonders from your Torah. Is he thinking, I know there's something here, but I don't quite see it? Was he asking for occult, mystical insights? Was he asking for a Kabbalah? Or is he saying, hey, listen, this is Yahweh's stuff. I know there's more to it than the narrative. I know there's something there, but I just can't quite see it. Would you please, Yahweh, don't just tell me, I'm here to soak it up. Unveil my eyes that I can see. See, he's doing something. He's saying, I want to see it. Unveil my eyes that I may perceive, which is to say comprehend, understand, and be able to process wonders of your Torah. What was he hoping to find? Do we even know? So I've talked to a couple of friends recently this week and posed this question, saying, listen, did David get an answer to that? Was it a rhetorical question? It's like, I know there's something there, but whatever. I've got business of the kingdom to attend to. I'm just reading the parashah, the Torah portions every week, and whatever. Doesn't matter. Or was he saying, hey, listen, I know there's something to find. Did he find it? If he found it, where would he hide it? Or did he hide it? Did he stick it in a treasure box, or did he tell the world? Is there any other book, any other chapter, any other passage which we've ever read where David said, hey, this is the stuff I found. Look, this is the stuff. This is the treasures. This is the mysteries that I found. I asked the question. I prayed. Yahweh said, I said, please open my eyes. And he opened my eyes. This is what I found, and here it is. I can't find it. Has anybody else found it, such a thing? Is there any chapter in any of the Psalms where David says, this is the stuff? Here it is. These are the mysteries of the Torah that I found. Has anybody found such a thing? I don't hear any yeses, so I'm guessing maybe not. Okay, so then you say, well, wait a second. Did David not get his prayer answered? Let's suppose he did get it answered. Where would he put it? Did he give it to Solomon? Should we look in the book of Proverbs that Solomon wrote, or maybe Ecclesiastes, and say, David gave it to Solomon, Solomon wrote it down, and he encrypted it somewhere, and now we got to go on a search? And it's like, where would you hide it? Well, here's the question. What are the wonders that he was looking for? What type of thing did he consider to be a wonder? This is now, I'm going to show you. This is a tool. I'm now going to show you the application of using this tool to translate Scripture, to decrypt the encrypted message. That's what we're now going to do. Dave, this is the second word. I'm going to show you the first word. This is in Psalm 119, verses 35. The word that David called wonders of the Torah is spelled Nun, Pei, Lamed, Aleph, Vav, Tav. Now that doesn't mean anything to anybody if you don't know Paleo-Hebrew. If you look at the Paleo-Hebrew, Nun is to, like a lightning bolt, you're imparting an engaging action, just like plugging something into the socket. And you put the Nun in front. But if you look at the word that's spelled Nun, Pei, Lamed, those 3 letters, it's the word Nephil, where we get the word Nephilim. Uh-oh, Nephilim, those were bad guys. Those were giants. And it also where we get the word to fall, Nephal, to impart a falling. And it's like, well, you might say that word we used earlier, Gadol, or Migdal, or the Tower of David, a towering giant which has fallen. That's in this word. So we could look at the word Nephal and say, here's a towering giant, and also the word fallen. But you could say fallen is the opposite of towering giant. Goliath was a towering giant that fell. And we talked about earlier Jeremiah 31:31, right, about the cute little things that became giant Migdal-im. The towering giants, could they be the Paleo letters? The letters of the Hebrew alphabet? No, that's too silly. What if each of the Paleo, or the letters of Yahweh revealing himself are like these towers that have fallen because of Israel's corruption and betrayal and treachery? I use the words betrayal and treachery because those are words that Yahweh used in other places. He says, you, Israel, have betrayed me with your treachery by turning your back on my covenant. Could the alphabetic meanings of the letters of Yahweh's, revealing Yahweh's kingdoms, be the towering giants that fell? Well, interestingly enough, the word Pei Lamed Aleph means wonderful, marvelous, secret, hidden mystery that's so amazingly wonderful. And it's pronounced Pele. His secret is Pei Lamed Aleph Vav, which is paleo. So paleo Hebrew, you might say, is his wonderful, marvelous secret that's amazingly hidden in the fallen, towering giants of the paleo. And then you have this word here, which is Aleph Vav Tav, which we discussed earlier, which is a letter of the alphabet, which is his oath that he has sworn to, and is his sign, symbol, signal, miracle of his revelation of himself, which is the Aleph, Vaved, or connected to the Tav by the Vav man, the mystery man of Yeshua, coming as Ben Yosef to connect the Aleph to the Tav. And he says, the book of Revelation, I am the Aleph and Tav, the beginning and the end. And that's all in the Nephilim, the paleo, Aleph, Vav, Tav, the paleo letters. You see the circles of, and it's like, now am I making that up, or is that just there? He gave us, Nund, the paleo of the oat, so that we could see the hidden wonder. And David said, will you please unveil my eyes that I can see the nephalot, the nepeleot of your Torah. And it's like, what else is in those words? So then we look up here to page 30, verse 35, and this is in the section of the Hey of the Revelation. So all 8 verses start with letter Hey. And in verse 35 it says here, lead me on the path of your commandments, for that is my desire. And you can say, okay, this is simply translated here as the word lead me. You can say, well, darikana. Okay, so this is how then you dissect. Again, I'm showing you how to apply this tool to this word. Ha is simply the, and the word dalet resh kaf is that word derek, which is way or path. That's a dalet here. Way or path, or the journey, or the wayfarer, or the process of where you walk. Kaf as a suffix means your, and then hey means to to shine forth or to reveal. And noon is like that lightning bolt, which is like an action of impartation. So here's to impart. And then you could say yod, that has to do with my, but that's the artist or the worker. The worker, the one who's engaged in the act of doing. So here it's translated saying, lead me. So you could say, well, the path, doing your path, impart light, impart revelation. So he's saying, okay, in this word you can see that he's saying, lead me, which is the same thing as shine the light on the path so I can see how, lead. So it's not just leading, because the word dabir actually is one who leads, but it's a cattle driver from behind, and it's also one in front. There's other words for lead. So we have in the English rendering a very simplified explanation of what this word means. But if you break apart its pieces, you can see the walking on the path, on your path, that I am doing on your but the dalet resh is dar, which is generation. So here you have my generation, because the yod at the end of the word, it means my. So if you look at these words here, dalet resh yod, this is my generation, because dalet resh is generation. And then yod kaf is the two hands, which is a picture of a yod being a working hand and a kaf being an open hand, and almost like this little glyph over here at the potter's wheel, you got the kaf and the yod, which is like, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this to you. I'm forming the pottery. I'm forming the working as it's spinning, which is the tet. And then you have kaf nun, which you look in the Red Dictionary, and kaf nun is where we get the word I can, which means yes, so, truly, thus, yeah, you betcha. Okay, now, though, we're going to break this down a little bit more by the use of the dictionary, and this is where the dictionary comes in handy because I just showed you the component parts there. Hey dalet resh, hadar, if you look up this word in the dictionary, it means adorn, honor, respected, glorified, magnificent. But it also means return, repeat, publish a new edition. Carta Jerusalem is publishing a new edition. It's like, oh, great, they're publishing a new edition. For Israel to come back to the covenant is to publish a new edition of the adornment as promised. It also means citrus fruit. When you see one of the fruits that we're supposed to have in the sukkahs is these citrus fruits. It's like the yellow, the gleaming yellow fruit on the tree. It's like, ah, there it is. I've been waiting for that. The world has been waiting for Israel to come back to the covenant to be like the citrus fruit on the green tree. The world has been waiting for this. They don't know it, but they don't know how to drive the bus, and they've run it off the road and caused all kinds of problems. And only Israel can drive this bus. Amen. And Yahweh said, when Israel comes back, I will give it the blessing. I think that's where we're at. We're talking, we hear all this stuff about tribulation, the demise of the economy, this, and that, the other thing. I think we need to focus on what Yahweh said would happen if we came back to his covenant. So this word, hadar, means to adorn, honor, respected, glorified, magnificent, return, repeat. Then if you look at the word for dalet resh, which is generation, and then if you look at the word for derek, which also means not only way, but tread, treading, marching, aiming, and then you look at the word for, in the dictionary, dalet resh, yod, kaf, nun, drikon, it means tension. Like, what's going to happen? Our world today has been quite a bit of tension. It also means bending a bow, which is a picture of straining and tension. It's also cocking a gun. That'll give you tension. And it also means to have something tight. It's like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? The word for kan, kaf nun, means I can, but it also is truth, honest, and a pedestal. Okay, the word hey dalet resh kaf hey dalet resh. Remember I said the yods and vavs can be like wild cards. You drop that out and you got kaf hey, nun is to impart. But if you look at the root of this, again, by use of the dictionary, it says direction, guidance, or briefing. If you put all that together, all those concepts, this is what I see in it. Magnificent honor awaits the generation, waiting like tension, awaits the generation who so treads this direction, who bends themselves to conform to my heart. Because the next two words is hey tav and then lamed bet yod, which is to bend or incline to my heart. And this is what we've done, this is what I did here. There's 8 verses that all start with Aleph. What if David hid the message in, put those 8 letters together, those 8 words? It's like an acronym, an acrostic. Take the 8 letters of the words that start with Aleph. Ashri, Ashri, Af, Ata, Al, Achli, Az, Odeka, Et, Hokika. Basically says, who would be blessed? Who would be blessed? For the reason that you are attached to my wish, then, at the occasion of your voice, induce Aleph Tav, you imitate my prescribed commands. Is what he's saying, if you would be blessed because you're connected to my wishes, just speak the word and it will induce everything that I had commanded. We're waiting for him to command the blessing and he's saying, no, you stay attached to me and at your words, you induce the blessing that I have already established according to my chok. Yes. It's like, We haven't done this yet. This is the blessing that he promised to his people, that our forefathers forsook for the sake of nonsense from the pagan religions and cultures and traditions, that they would rather wander around like the Celtic knot, never knowing the straight path. And Yahweh said, if you guys only knew what I have prepared for you, and all we can do from the Christian perspective is when we get to heaven. Oh, when we get to heaven, it's going to be so great. But Yahweh said, the blessing is for right here, right now. And would this be the generation? Could this be the generation who is the magnificent honor of all the things that he has stored up? And he said other places, and through the mechanism of using this stuff to retranslate the words, this is what I found. He says, listen, in fact, it's in Deuteronomy 31, the Song of Moses. He says all the other nations are focused around or leveraged according to Israel. You can say, well, that's geographically. Here's Israel and all the other nations around him. But what if he's saying, listen, Israel, I told you I'd give you the blessing. And if you profane it and defile it, I'll throw it to the dogs. They can come and eat your food off the table. And the dogs can eat the food off the table until the day you decide to come home and eat the food I put on your table for you to eat. And when you do, we'll scare off the dogs and the cockroaches and the rats and all the other animals that are not kadosh, and you can come back and eat the food on your table, which is this stuff. And when you come back and eat the food on the table and appreciate it, you can have the blessing of that food. But ever since the beginning, Israel didn't want the blessing of that food. Israel decided to throw it away and eat what the dogs and the cockroaches and the rats were eating, and then they turned to eat the dogs and the cockroaches and the rats themselves, because after all, Jesus said it was okay. Not really. Yeshua said, these words are your food. They said, hey, wait a minute. Aren't you hungry? We went to get a sandwich for you. And he says, my food is to do the will of my Father who sent me. That's what my food is. He didn't say, oh, you can eat anything profane that he said in the book of Deuteronomy. He said would abominate you. He said the position of that beatitude that says, blessed are those who are filled, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled, is in the position of the menorah. The menorah is filled with oil to produce light. The day of Yom Teruah, day of trumpets, blowing of trumpets, which is the same day according to the pattern of the festivals, is the trumpet is filled, the shofar is filled with breath to produce the fruit of sound. If we hunger and thirst after righteousness, what is righteousness? To simply do what he said. The word righteous is zadik, which is this, which is the Ark of the Covenant, which is the Torah manifested in humanity as behavior. For us to do what the Torah says is righteousness. If you hunger and thirst to do righteousness, you will be filled, so you can be like the menorah, producing the fruit of what these things are that you have consumed, which is the food that he's put on our table as Israel. Is there any questions? So here's what I did. I'll say what again I did in Psalm 119. Now I've gotten Aleph through Vav. The first word of each of the 8 verses of each of the 22 sections starts with the letter from that section. So if you just put all of those 8 words together, so you have 8 words starting with Aleph, 8 words starting with Bet, 8 words starting with Gimel. And you sit there and say, let me put those into a sentence and see if it reads. Well, it doesn't read so cleanly, but again, Hebrew is concept. So I'm trying to show you this mechanism of saying, if you read it in English, they have all these words in between the words, which makes it flow like a nice sentence. But in Hebrew, they're pictures, they're concepts. And each word is a picture, is comprised of letters which are pictures, which are an accumulation, a compilation, a composition of concepts. So pictures of concepts, put in the concepts, and then you take each one of those 8 words. And what if he did this? I mean, I don't know, maybe he didn't, but what if he did? What if he took these 8 words and you wrote them all into a sentence? What does it say? And so the whole reading of the letter in the Hey position basically says, the exuberance over learning the meaning, clarifying through the nonsense, magnificent honor awaits the generation who so treads this direction, who bends to conform to my heart. The past anger transfers to confirmation and approval. Your foe gets the anger now. The tables are turned. The vagueness removed, yielding exposition, or the exposing of benefits. Here they are. That's what those 8 words in the He position read. In the Vav position, now I've said the Vav is Yeshua, the sent one, incarnated as a man. And people say, well, where do you get Vav equals a man? Vav is a nail, a hook, something which connects, but where do you get Vav as a man? Well, here's what if you translate all the words, the 8 words that start with a Vav, this is what they say as I have kind of rendered them. I am he who imports myself to arrive. That sure sounds like the Aleph betting himself to the Dalet. Manifesting himself. I am he who imports myself to arrive. Okay, let's suggest that somebody says, nah, I don't believe it. I think you're making that up. Let me show you that word just as an example. I am he who imports myself to arrive. It's the first word in the Vav position, which is verse 41. The first word starts with a Vav. Vav, Yod, Bet, Aleph, Nun, Yod. As was on that picture that we showed here, Ani Yahweh, the word Ani, as I said, 80 times in the book of Ezekiel, Yahweh says, then they will know, Ki Ani Yahweh, then they will know that I am Yod He Vav He. When what I say is what I do, and you see it, you'll remember I told you, that's how you know, Aleph Tav, that's my monogram, that's my symbol, that's my logo, Aleph Tav. As Lois made this, Aleph and Tav, what I said, that's what's going to happen. Ani is the word for I am. Ani. The word Bet, Aleph, Bo, actually Yavo, like Mani Judah's newsletter, basically means importing or to arrive. The word import is actually Yod Bet Aleph, and Bet Aleph itself, simplified, means he who comes or arrives. So the Yod as a prefix means basically he will, and Yod is my, basically claiming it. So it's like, okay, he who comes and imports myself. I import myself. He who comes and imports myself to arrive. Who else can do that? From off the earth to the earth. That's who Yeshua is. So for me to say in the Vav position, this sure looks like Yeshua. Hey, look, he's the man who was slain. So we're getting down here, what, 5 minutes?
About 7 or 8.
Okay, so I'm going to read the rest of the Vav because I thought it was really interesting. It was like 3 in the morning last night. I was trying to figure this out. I am he who imports myself to arrive. I will be afflicted, bowed down by the wood, the tree or the wood. It's almost like, oh boy, there's a picture of the cross, right? And yet protected by the covenant. I could show you these words if we run. It's done the same way, using the mechanism of I'm trying to show you the value of the use of the red dictionary and this chart, and knowing the Aleph Bet is Yahweh revealing his plan, his intention, what he's going to do so that we can take it and run with it to receive the blessing instead of the curse. That's what this is for. Okay, I'll start over. I am he who imports myself to arrive. I will be afflicted, bowed down by the wood, and yet protected by the covenant. I will keep watch responsibly, yet be blamed, a rebel. And then there's the word fire and poison, which is what he's been, the Nazarene is regarded as that. The famous, glorious Aleph Tav. You went traveling, flowing in honor and praiseworthy procession. You picture Aleph Tav coming to the earth, heralded by the legions of his angels, rejoicing. And were followed by sad grief, pestilence, plague. What's happened ever since he's been here? People still spun out. Anyway, then there's this word that says, be afraid, wife, military military mechanization requires I will look away a short while. Astonishing desolation ruins my open hand, just like I said would happen. And it's like, wait a minute, what's he saying? It was supposed to be great. What has happened for the past 2,000 years? Military industrialization in his name has ruined his open hand, which is the gift of his Torah, because Yeshua's personality, countenance, disposition, words, and character have been altered to look like those of a pagan deity instead of those of Yahweh Eloheinu. And it's right there. It's right there in his word. Anyway, to resolve all this and make it simple, we've been asked to make this so that even children can regard it. Very elementary. So at the Love for Israel conference a few months ago, there was a song. Was anybody there to hear the song? Yep. Okay. So we want to sing the song is a little, I don't know if you remember it, but this is making it very simple. And it's done to the tune of Itsy Bitsy Spider, because Itsy Bitsy Spider is just step by step crawling up the water spout, kind of like a picture of the horsetail plant, right?